This is the biggest thing that is happening in regards to AI music platforms. All three major music labels, they're all suing Suno and Udio. AI music creation platforms have been top of mind, top of conversation, including on this channel. And we dove in regards to Udio's terms of service, because as you know, I love to look at the contracts that you guys sign. Okay. When you use these platforms, you sign the terms of service by saying, I agree when you sign up, right? So we did a deep dive. And the question was, do you own the music that you make on these music platforms? And the answer, just so you don't have to go and watch that whole video, please do if you want to, but the answer is you get a license. You input some instruction, output comes your, wonderful creation. And if you want to release it, if you want to exploit it commercially, they're okay with that, right? And so we were just looking at, well, there's the issue of ownership, right? So that means you get to use it on a limited license kind of basis, but you don't actually own it. Well, the second piece had to do with copyright. And it's, well, under copyright law, copyright ownership, right, is in regards to human-made stuff. Copyright does not carry with AI. So that's basically what we talked about. And we're like, these platforms are really doing their thing. We knew that Suno came about in December of 2023, kind of exploded on the market. Udio then came on about April of this year, and just we have huge investors. will.i.am, Common. So we have so much interest and use to the extent that we know that Udio is generating over 800,000 tracks, clips, whatever you want to call them, every single day. So there's an unbelievable amount of output content that is not only being created, but then put on music platforms. So we had lots of conversation about, what this looks like. We have an update. And the update is that all three major music labels, Universal, Sony, Warner, and their imprints, some subsidiaries, they are all suing Suno and Udio. And this is for copyright infringement. This is definitely the biggest lawsuit, and this is the biggest thing that is happening in regards to AI music platforms. And, kind of leading up to this, after reviewing the terms of service, we were just kind of looking at, some of the problems that different users were identifying. And they're like, this is weird. When I input certain instructions and I give it like the same lyrics to, Mariah Carey's Christmas song for this and for that, it is creating what we can best describe as like a cover song with the same melodies and the same kind of general vibe, if you want to call it that. And we go, that's interesting. Is that a glitch? Is that copyright infringement? And then, of course, the question of, well, what are these platforms using, right? So if Udio, who, has been our bigger focus on this channel, if Udio's like, we can generate every genre, we can create professional quality music. You can, not we. You can. Well, the question was, well, where are you learning? Where's your learning all of that? Is it going through Spotify and scrubbing through and making copies and then regurgitating? Help us to understand. With kind of that pre-roll leading up to it, that's where we're at today. So what I'm going to do is I have the actual complaints. We're going to go through and we're going to see what the labels are suing for and what they're saying. And this is with the support of the Recording Industry Association of America. They're saying, quote, that this is willful copyright infringement at an almost unimaginable scale. And we go back to the, well, if they're making over 800,000, people are making over 800,000 tracks just on Udio alone. Yeah, if what they're saying is true. What's been interesting over the course of so many months of covering this is our community has been helpful for giving feedback on just, you musicians, you artists, you music producers, right? Out the gate, I think people were pretty apprehensive to AI generated music. It's not real music. You're not a real artist. I'm never going to use it. And then I think over so many months, people became very willing to use it. It's part of my art creation process. And the tone, I think, in the acceptance of it definitely changed. So the question is, Suno and Udio, are you guys using your platform to have the AI go and train from real human-made music? And if you are, right, what are you going to say to that? Is it copyright infringement? So Suno CEO Mikey Schulman, he stated that Suno does not memorize and regurgitate pre-existing content. And we care. I mean, what are these platforms saying? Because we're going to go through and see, what does the complaint say? What they're saying is that AI generating music platforms are imitating real music. This is really important. They're not just saying that you're going and listening to the songs to get inspired, because a lot of people are making that one-to-one comparison. Artists go all the time and they'll go and listen to Michael Jackson. We'll go and listen, we'll get inspiration. It doesn't mean that we're stealing anything. It's not necessarily copyright infringement. So that's what these AI platforms have essentially been arguing. They're like, we are not copying anything. We're just going and learning and getting inspired. And then what is created when you go and use Udio is something totally new. What are the music platforms saying? And what was disclosed in this complaint was that in pre-litigation letters, because as you guys know, I'm a real lawyer, I litigate. So before we actually file a lawsuit, usually there's lots of heated letters that go back and forth. We're claiming this, we're going to sue you if you don't do X, Y, and Z. So in these letters, what the labels are saying is that Udio and Suno came back and they go, we are fine because this is fair use. And the idea with fair use is that you can use copyrighted content that other people own without permission. But the problem that we're going to talk about is that it's usually for a list of reasons, which might be academic purposes, it's for a journalistic purpose, it's for a parody. So take this channel, for example. I've reacted to music videos on the channel, literally from like beginning to end. And I stop it in between and I give you feedback about the legality of things that I am seeing, what it's like in the music business, and I just give you some commentary. And the reason why I can do that is because under fair use, I am teaching you something. I am using the copyrighted content and I am transforming it into something new. This is essentially what they're claiming, what was said in these letters back from Suno and Udio. And so the labels are like, this is not fair use. You're ridiculous. What is everything trained on? We don't know the answer to that. But what we are going to go through is specifically the actual complaint, and I'm excited to get your guys' feedback on this because it is so interesting. So let me start with just showing you real quick. There are two complaints here. They are substantially the same. Okay, so we're going to focus on the Udio one. Here's the one for Suno. This was filed by the major labels in the district, so meaning federal court, the District of Massachusetts. Here is Suno, and then here is the Udio version. This one was filed in the District of New York. Now you might be asking, because I'm sure this is the first thing that came to mind, which is, how do you decide where to sue? And the answer is that pretty much all the plaintiffs are Delaware companies, and they do business principally in either New York or Los Angeles. The defendant, in both cases, do their business principally in the state that the lawsuit's happening. Okay, so that's how they determine personal jurisdiction. All right, so here we go. Here's the complaint, and there is a demand for a jury trial. Now, what they do in these complaints is that they do a big kind of rev up and they tell us all the things. They tell us all the companies that are involved, and so they define, right? So they go Universal and Universal's imprints. And so basically it is the major labels. And then they're going to go through and say what all happened. So they go AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning. It's the next frontier of technological development. AI companies, like all other enterprises, must abide by the law to protect human creativity. There's nothing that exempts AI technology from copyright law or that excuses AI companies from playing by the rules. This lawsuit seeks to enforce these basic principles. This case concerns generative AI services, which allows users to generate digital music files that sound like genuine human sound recording in response to basic input. The capacity for generative AI service to produce convincing imitations of genuine sound recordings starts with copying a vast range of sound recordings. All right, we're going to talk about that. Machine-generated content that will directly compete, cheapen, and ultimately drown out the genuine sound recordings on which the service is built. That was the initial concern. And we go, hey, with like AI music, how is this going to impact real musicians in the synchronization licensing realm? Are you going to be able to compete with, let's say, an AI music library where it's like one-stop shop? The clearance is not this whole thing to check with like 5 different people and their publishers and this and that. So we had a lot of conversation in regards to that. But what they're saying here is they're like, look, you can go on Udio's platform, put in very general inputs, and you can have a whole song in like 10 seconds. Is it okay that there's a competitor in the market? Sure. But is that what they're saying? All right, plaintiffs are record companies or record music businesses. Together, they own and exclusively control copyrights in a great majority of most commercially valuable sound recordings in the world. So our defendant here is Uncharted Labs, which is doing business as Udio, a generative AI service that creates digital music files within seconds of receiving a user's prompt. Building and operating a service like Udio requires at the outset copying and ingesting massive amounts of data to, quote, train a software model to generate outputs. For Udio specifically, this process involves copying decades of the most popular music and then outputting imitations. This imitation language, I think, is going to make the biggest deal in this, because what they're claiming is they go, you are actually making copies. And for those of you who are like AI experts, please sound off in the comments. I hit up like all my contacts who develop apps and use AI for their input on this. But in regards to how it specifically studies music and how it goes through, is it holding on to a copy temporarily? Is it a permanent kind of thing? Because what they're going to claim here is they're going to say that Udio is actually, in Suno, are actually going, downloading copies of the music, storing copies of the music. And I go, that's interesting. Remember we talked about Udio's terms of service? I was like, that reminds me of something. And in fact, let me go back, because we love to look at the terms of service and when they make updates. Because when a company makes updates and they're really recent, we're always like, that's interesting. Because it's usually in response to something. But if you guys go to the terms of service and you go to section 6.3, all right, so section 6 is what talks about ownership of the content. And it goes, your content, right? So this answers the question of what can you do? Do you own it? Can you distribute it? All that stuff. So they answer that here in 1. If you go to 6.3.2, it goes, in order to operate the service, we may need to obtain from you certain license rights in your content, so that actions we take in operating the services, this made me laugh, are not considered legal violations. Accordingly, by using the services, you upload your content, right? So if you put something into Udio, you grant us, our affiliates, successors, assigns, so like all of our people that work with us, all of our people and companies that work with us. You give us access to use, host, cache, store, reproduce, that's important, transmit, display, publish, distribute, modify your content to operate, improve, promote, and provide the services. So for me, I'm just like, okay, so let's say I use it, I make a song, I put in some kind of, thing that I made. So what are you saying that you can do with the thing that I gave you? So it goes, they can use it for the services, including to reproduce, display, publish, distribute, output, right? So it's like the stuff that it generates, or your input content to train, or otherwise improve or modify our AI and machine learning models related to the services. So there's like 2 pieces here, people. 1, I want to know what you're doing with my stuff. So apparently I'm giving you license to then go and like use my stuff. It goes on to say, if you want to advertise with it, it ends up like literally appearing in someone else's song that they make on Udio. Okay, so that's number 1. Good to know. All right, I don't love that, but good to know. But also, it specifically does say that with anything that you input into it, it's going to study and learn from it, right? And then it's going to apply it to other stuff that is made. So I go in this kind of realm of like, we're trying to understand how this is all working. What information did you use to learn the first go around, so that if I gave you the input prompts, you would know how to output the thing that I'm looking for. So I think that in their terms, they're going to that point. Obviously, nowhere on their website are they talking about what they use to initially train the AI. I don't know. I put in my input, I give it my, actual original ideas, and then it creates a hit song for someone else. I want to just plant that seed as you guys are thinking through like your feelings on all of this. Okay, but let's go back to the complaint. Given that the foundation of its business has been to exploit copyrighted sound recordings without permission, look, they're all just saying it. Udio has been deliberately evasive about what exactly it has copied. It's unsurprising, after all. To answer that question honestly would be to admit willful copyright infringement for an unimaginable scale. Udio's executives instead speak publicly in exceedingly general terms. For example, they have said Udio's service is trained on a, quote, large amount of publicly available and high quality music. So Udio has said it has been trained on a large amount of publicly available and high quality music that is obtained from the internet and the best quality music that's out there. Now, the reason why that jumps out to me as a copyright attorney is because I'm like, oh my gosh, if my client released this, what it sounds like they're trying to say, because they're like, it's publicly available. It sounds like they're trying to say it's like, or confused to say it's public domain, right? So that means that if it's public domain, it's like Beethoven's classical X, Y, and Z, right? Or Mozart's Fifth. Like, if it's public domain, that means there's not current copyright that's attached to it. So if you want to go and do fur lease with your, rap version, awesome, love it. You don't have to go and get clearance from anybody. But they're just saying publicly available. So it kind of sounds like they're like, we just went on Spotify. And that's a problem here because publicly available does not mean public domain. The internet means all these potential DSPs. All right, so concerning. In other words, if Udio had taken efforts to avoid copying plaintiff sound recordings and ingesting them into AI model or its AI model, Udio's service would not be able to reproduce the convincing imitations, which they're going to show us, of such a vast range of human musical expression at the quality that Udio touts, right? Because they're like, this is like real producers did this. It's of professional quality. Udio service trains on the expressive features of these copyrighted sound recordings for the ultimate purpose of poaching the listeners, fans, and potential licensees of the sound recordings it copied. Now, let me show you guys. I pulled something else from the docket. So this was Exhibit A to this complaint. And this is a long document. This is almost 80 pages. And so this is the list that the attorneys included of all of the times that they were able to identify what they alleged to be copyright infringement because they were able to get Udio to generate a song that had, substantial similarity. So we go, Frank Sinatra, and this is in their catalog of the things that they own, right? And have copyright registrations in. We see John Lennon, right? The Beach Boys. So P.S., someone on their team had actually go and make this list. Bless them. The Beatles. And I think I saw not just Bruce Springsteen. I see ABBA, Frank Sinatra, Future. All right, so it's a very, 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 very long list. Now, in addition to that, they also included this. And they go, these are the additional Udio outputs resembling copyright recordings. And so they go in and they provided additional, literally, we were able to generate these outputs. They made recordings, they give it to the court, and they go, these are the prompts we use. So they give you like the exact thing that they did. Like we did, pop rock, 60s, British acoustic, guitar, and then they put in relevant timestamps. Again, it's a very lengthy document. All right, so, we got some evidence stacking at this point. So they go, we've done our due diligence. And this was something that different users started finding as we have been kind of researching these different platforms. And just to help you guys understand, I know you're using them and they're amazing. But one of the issues is that a couple people started to pick up and they're like, interesting, when you put in these certain prompts, especially and specifically on Udio, we're getting songs that I called. I'm like, this is a cover song. That's very complicated. It wasn't meant to be a cover song, but it sounded exactly like the original with a different performance, we'll say. So when plaintiffs directly accuse Udio, because remember, guys, we do the demand letter, right? We send and we say all the things in a letter before we actually sue. So when plaintiffs directly accuse Udio of copying plaintiffs' sound recordings to train its model, Udio did not deny or proffer any facts to undermine those allegations. It would have been simple for Udio just to say it illegally acquired the recordings if that was the case. Instead, Udio deflected and disingenuously asserted that its training data is, quote, competitively sensitive and constitute, quote, trade secrets, despite being on publicly available music out there for the fans. Udio also claimed that its large-scale copying of sound recordings is fair use, which was telling because fair use only arises as a defense to an otherwise unauthorized use of copyrighted work. Now, here's the thing. I don't know who the attorney for Udio is or Suno, right? These are different companies. But guys, you have to keep this in mind. Everything that you say in letters and emails can be used against you, even if you're the attorney. Just being like, we're having like a private settlement communication. If you don't mark it as such, it's going to be used in the lawsuit, which is what happened here. I don't know if this person just had a, yikes kind of moment, but that's a really good point. If you're saying that you had the right to study the music in question, then you're not going to be like, but it's fair use, right? Fair use is a defense. It's a defense. I already did the thing. I took the music video. I reacted to it on my channel. I did it intentionally. But my defense of why it's okay that I did that is because I did it for educational purposes. That falls within the fair use exception. Is that going to make or break the case completely? No. but it's telling. All right, so now they're getting into what they did. This is how they made these discoveries, which we kind of talked about in some of the previous videos. Plaintiffs tested Udio's product and generated outputs using a series of prompts that pinpoint a particular sound recording by referencing specific subject matter, genre, artist, instrument, vocal style, and the like. Udio's service repeatedly generated outputs that closely matched the targeted copyrighted sound recording, which means that Udio copied those copyrighted sound recordings to include in its training data. So, this goes to just the imitation piece, which I'll come back to. Udio's service generates music with such speed and scale that it's overrunning the market with AI generated music, and it's devaluing human created works, right? And so we talked about this. Over 800,000 files are made per day, which is over, 6 million files per week. Udio sought no permission, gives no credit or compensation to human artists or other rights holders whose work fueled their creation. And also, hey, P.S., Udio's making a lot of money. It's raised millions of dollars in funding. And we know, I think it was Suno also did a round of like 125 million, they raised recently. And also Udio is charging up to $30 a month for its highest subscription tier. So what they go on to say is they're like, Udio is basically charging users per number of tracks that they're creating. And so the attorneys are essentially just arguing. They're like, if you have a company that is commercially exploiting and making imitation songs, they're not like, oh, this like trains the model and the model got inspired and it's making totally brand new stuff. Now, the one thing I'll just throw onto this from conversations that I've had internally is that, for the music distributors that we speak with, they talk about running into issues with AI created music where they get a content ID claim. And the reason that matters is because what they're saying is that, hey, we found in this AI generated song that this is from this other song, this human made song. So to the extent that there might be like some artifacts or something that's actually happening from the AI generated music, I think that's really what their focus is here. Become your own record label, which is literally if you're like, hey, I want to start a record label. Cool, I got you. Understand the entire music business. I want to set up my LLC. I want to do the marketing. It's a lot. So for example, sync licensing, for example, music marketing, it's significantly cheaper than anything you would ever get from a law firm as far as all the stuff that comes with it. And you want to make 6 figures from your music career and you want to do this for real, like I'm going to give you what you need. Udio cannot afford liability for its copy right infringement by claiming, avoid. It cannot avoid it by claiming fair use. The doctrine of fair use promotes human expression by permitting the unlicensed use of copyright works in certain limited instances. And so what they go through is now to talk about the factors, right? So fair use, it's what's the purpose? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to educate people about legalities of music videos? 2, the nature. What is the nature of the copyrighted work? What's the amount that you use? Did you use the entire thing or did you just use a little bit of it, right? To make like your educational point. And 4, the effect of the use on the potential market or the value of the copyrighted work. So guys, I mean, if you're a music creator and you're watching this, think about it. We have the labels making the big claim on behalf of Michael Jackson's estate and such, but they went on Spotify and they went and trained from yours so that someone who loves your music puts in prompts very similar to what you do. Genre, style, groove, male, female, whatever. And they're able to generate something that imitates your song and maybe even has artifacts from your actual song. That's what they're essentially alleging here. They're like, this is so far above and beyond. Really, they should have gotten licenses and permission, and they should be paying for all of this, right? But they go to that 4th factor, the effect on the market. They're like, you're going to literally drown out everyone over time because the royalty pool is going to be just silly for the amount of like AI generated tracks on Spotify because you get paid based on a royalty pool. It's not based on the one for one, so to speak, on your plays. So they go, obviously this affects our bottom line, but you guys really should be concerned about this too. Okay, so plaintiffs bring this action. They're asking for an injunction. They're saying, court, we want you to stop and order that these AI music platforms cannot study and learn from other music without permission. And we also want damages, okay? So you'll see in the claims that they're asking for $150,000 for each infringement. Do you remember our little list that we just looked at? So if and they are seeking $150,000 per infringement based on a willful copyright infringement claim. It's going to be a lot. Okay, quite a lot. We talk about that for purposes of you guys making sure you register your copyrights timely, because it makes a big difference whether you're seeking actual damages, how much did you not get paid, versus $150,000 times however many infringements there were. So they go through and they just talk about the different parties. Where are they? What's the jurisdiction? Which I already kind of mentioned, so we'll just jump through. And again, guys, the complaint for Suno is substantially the same. It's by the same law office. They just file this in separate states. So we have Exhibit A, we just went through. Those are the sound recordings in question. They talk about how, Udio, like, can you believe that? Udio just launched like a few months ago. It's really something that we're already here. But anyway, they go on, they're like, it was launched by a team of former researchers from Google DeepMind. They launched the Udio's AI music generation service and promoted it as a product that, quote, enables everyone from classically trained musicians to those in pop star ambition to hip hop fans to people who just want to have fun with their friends to create awe-inspiring songs in mere moments. And then they talk about just the financial earnings. Upon information and belief, consistent with the facts of how generative AI works, the content Udio used to train its AI model includes reams of copyrighted recordings that Udio reproduced without permission from plaintiffs. Udio could not have built a model capable of producing audio similar to our music without the initial act of copying those records. Now, this is what they're saying. This is how it works, guys. I really want you to pay attention to this, because this is what they are saying is the case. And if this is the case, pretty damn interesting. So they go on information release. This is how Udio trains the AI model. So they go, A, Udio first copies massive numbers of sound recordings, including by scraping, i.e., copying or downloading them from digital sources. This vast collection of information forms the input or the corpus upon which Udio AI model is trained. Udio then cleans the copied recordings by removing any material, whether technical or substantive, that it does not wish to include. For example, duplicates or low-quality data. This step also involves copying the recordings to convert them into a common digital audio format. So this is what they're saying the actual copying step looks like. Udio then processes this corpus of previously copied recordings to establish the value of the parameters that form its AI model. This step includes additional copying of the recordings, including into computer memory, as they further converted and divided into units as those units that are processed. And the reason why I just mentioned this, I'm like, look, for you tech, app, AI, nerds, professionals, I just would love your input, because I go, one thing that I don't know for certainty is kind of how it works with OpenAI, and to the degree that something is copied and in memory, right? So it's in the memory for the AI, because I go, well, for there to be copyright infringement, what's the copying, right? Is this like a temporary thing where it just goes and like studies a song, it listens to it, or that we're actually copying something into its memory? What they're saying is that's exactly the case. And in fact, they're even storing it, allegedly. And we care about that because it also goes hand in hand with those terms of service as it relates to your input, your, music that you upload into Udio, and the fact that they say in their terms that they are storing and they have permission in order to do that. Udio next processes the data further to fine-tune its AI model, which may require additional copying of the collected sound recordings. All right, so let's just jump down here. So they go on to actually give examples. All right, and we've seen audio examples from so many creators who were able to kind of get Udio to generate music. And a quick shout out to Sync My Music. He was one that we did a reaction to. His video is Udio reproducing copyrighted songs. So they even cite it in the complaint. So if we go down here, Udio's output confirms copying and ingestion of plaintiffs' copyright recordings. So the fact that Udio's product generates digital music files that mimic readily identified features of our music supports the conclusion that Udio is using our music in training the AI model. To be clear, plaintiffs are not presently alleging that these outputs themselves infringe the copyright recordings unless discovery reveals that they directly or indirectly recapture portions of the original music. And that matters because, in discovery, if you do have to sue a company, The best thing about lawsuits is that you have all of the power of the law to get everything related to your case to prove your case. So, what these attorneys get to do is they now get to go on a fishing expedition to find out exactly how Suno, how Udio trains their AI, how like everything's going to come out. So they're not going to be able to, hide one way or another. But what the attorneys are saying is they're like, well, right now we're not alleging that the outputs themselves, right? So the music that is created is in fact like a copy. Now, I kind of made that suggestion. I go from what I'm hearing to the extent that there might be some kind of artifact that's being picked up by content ID. And we saw this with some creators, and they're like, we're even seeing some likeness issues. It sounds like they ripped off the Beatles. I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that. Right now, that's not what they're claiming, but it could come out in discovery. And they're going to get these answers. And so, that's why with a lot of these cases, not too long after a lawsuit might be filed, there might be settlement. And it's because, you got to shut it down before the information comes out. And I don't know that's going to be the case here, okay? I'm just speculating at this point. Plaintiffs found that with certain prompts, they can call Udio's product to generate digital music files with, melodic and vocal similarities to well-known copyrighted sound recordings. Plaintiffs discovered while using these prompts that it included characteristics of popular songs. All right, and I think they even use examples like The Temptations, My Girl. They cite all these, which have been taken down. So these all otherwise were showing the actual output on Udio, but Udio took these all down, FYI. But anyway, I thought this was interesting. They then go and they show this actually written out, and they go, here is the one that we were able to generate. And so they show with the different notes and just little simple things. I don't know, how much you guys know music theory. They just highlight the different notes to show the comparisons, as well as, the chords. You can see the chords are exactly the same with the original song. You can see that the notes themselves kind of follow along, and they use fun little color coding. The attorneys really go far above and beyond to not only provide the court with evidence of the audio itself, but they also are showing the notation and the written out version. They go on to use examples of Green Day's hit American Idiot. I thought this one was visually pretty easy to follow. This is Subliminal Hysteria. That's the Udio version. You go down to the Green Day version. Very, very, very similar. And what they did, guys, just, to avoid any confusion here, is that they put in prompts using the exact lyrics. So they go with the Michael Bublé's Sway. They're putting in genre and, different things to otherwise try to get it to generate something. And then lo and behold, it does. And they use the exact same lyrics because it's easy, obviously, to be like, oh, look, it's using the exact same melodies with the same words. So they did use that, and they just go on. Let me show you. And they do the Michael Bublé example. They do the Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. Same thing, examples. For you music people, I think knowing a little bit of music theory is helpful. Someone's going to have to testify to all this. Someone's going to have to explain this to a jury, right? So Udio example of what they were able to generate. Here's the actual song. So unfortunately, very, very, very similar. All right, so they go on, and there are quite a few examples, right? And we go back to that Exhibit A, and it's, just thousands and thousands. And I saw ABBA. I'm a fan. I don't know if you guys like ABBA. Bruce Springsteen, Michael Jackson. And then they give examples. They go, look, for the prompt, a sad and depressing song in the style of Billie Holiday about a whiteling rose, jazz blues, atmospheric in the style of Billie Holiday, binaural. And that was able to get a Billie Holiday, Ain't No Sunshine Can Revive. So they go through, and, unfortunately for these platforms, the evidence is pretty significant. So let me jump now so we can just, kind of talk about with just the fair use arguments. And they go on, they give all kinds of more examples. They're like, all kinds of different users have done the same thing. They've posted, they've given prompts. Other people can go and replicate this. Unfortunately, with copyright law, the way that it works, it's like speeding. If you speed and you get caught, you got caught. Doesn't matter what your excuse is. And I remember when different users were commenting on this and being like, oh, I don't know if it's just a glitch. I don't know if this is just a glitch and they're working on fixing it, but it doesn't matter. And that's the point. So all of this has been documented. It goes back to, make sure everything is always documented, because evidence will get deleted, evidence will get removed. And to the extent that we now have $150,000 times each one of these alleged infringement, the damages are significant. So they're talking about even 3 hours after, some of these things were exposed, Udio's removing stuff of the offending music files, but it had already been captured. Udio cannot claim fair use. When plaintiffs raised these issues with Udio in a written letter, Udio attempted to justify its pervasive illegal copying. An attorney totally wrote that. A pervasive illegal copying of plaintiff sound recording by claiming fair use. This itself is a tactic or a tacit admission of Udio's illegal copying, as fair use only comes into play when an unauthorized use of a copyrighted work needs to be justified. So, AKA, y'all, if you didn't copy, you don't need to say it's fair use. The fair use doctrine has been coined as an equitable rule of reason that balances various contextual factors to determine whether an unauthorized use of a copyrighted work is fair. Okay. And then it goes into just discussion, guys. Fair use, it's usually for something of criticism, comment, news, right? If the news is reporting on Taylor Swift's new great show and it shows like her intro movie clip or something like that, they can do that. It's for news, comment, criticism, teaching, scholarship, research, and we also talked about parody. And they go, these are all the reasons that is fine under the law. What Udio is doing does not qualify as that. Rather, Udio services copies and ingests copyrighted works to create computer-generated imitations of human expression that do not merit copyright protection. Udio's motive is brazenly commercial and threatens to displace the genuine human artistry that is the heart of copyright protection. The use of an original work to achieve a purpose that is the same or highly similar to that of the original work is more likely to substitute for the work. For those of you who had these issues come up, because sometimes you contact me and we have to claim fair use. Again, it's a defense. And so what they do is they cite to the Andy Warhol case and they go, if you are creating something that is basically for the same purpose, what happens is that even if they can show that there isn't anything that's actually copied from the original, what it's called are derivative works. Okay, so if you are a music producer and you contact me and you say, hey, I want to remix one of your songs. If I say, okay, cool, here are the vocal stems, here's the drums, here's the guitars, and I give you all the stems, and you remix it, the thing you come up with is based on my original song. So that's called a derivative work. So I still have copyright claims in the new thing that was made because it was made from my thing. So that's kind of the argument here. They go, well, even if AI does come in, it's going and it's taking from, it's learning from, and it's imitating the original stuff. And so therefore, it would be a derivative work, right? And so to the extent that, the AI platforms are coming back and they're like, no, it's fair use. Are they going to win on that argument? Here is something that I thought that was super interesting about this. Let me just finish the section. The use here is far from transformative. There's no functional purpose for Udio's AI model to ingest our music other than to spit out new competing music files. Udio is copying our music for a commercial purpose. It's deriving revenue directly proportional to the number of music files that it generates. Further, it further tilts the fair use factors against it. Okay. Now, if we go all the way down here, and they talk also about, they're like, look, now, sampling is even happening of AI music. So basically, like, this thing is taking over the music industry. So the attorneys go on, and what I thought was interesting in the claims relief, they have two claims, and both of them are for copyright infringement. One is for the music that is post 1972, and then the other is for pre 1972. And the thing that I thought was interesting, because I have, copyright infringement case right now in federal court, is that you can claim other things, right? So you go, it's not just copyright infringement. But what the attorneys are arguing is that they're like, these companies are coming in. Skynet is coming in and they're not only destroying the music business, they're ripping off human-made music. They're not giving us, the credit. They're not paying us. We have problems with all this stuff. Therefore, copyright infringement. Well, there's a state law claim that you can bring for interference with business opportunity. And I was just interested that they didn't claim this. Now, there are preemption issues with some federal, claims, but you can claim something different that gets you to the same result. And I just thought it was really interesting that they did not claim that. Because if they lose, because we have seen these lawsuits where they say The AI learned from my stuff, and so far, those lawsuits have not been successful. So just as a catch-all, I just was wondering about that. I'm like, well, because if you lose on the copyright infringement, you can still get them for if it turns out that they in fact are taking your music, studying from it, imitating it, right? And it might not be copyright infringement. We'll see what happens. But I thought that was interesting. So then how does that impact us moving forward? And how does that impact you? You know, if you've made it this far, you're obviously very interested in copyright, understanding the music business, understanding what's going on. Okay. Does this matter to you? I'm just curious because, again, based on the feedback from our community here and just your guys' feelings and usage of, you know, AI music in what you're doing, whether in part or in whole, right? And it's amazing. The stuff that it outputs is really amazing. And I think that, you know, this is going to be a pretty seminal case because, again, you have all the major labels, right? The big three coming after the two biggest AI music platforms, and they're not asking for a small amount of money. This could potentially be a huge judgment. It's the kind of thing that like puts, you know, businesses out of business. So I'm very curious what you guys are thinking. I am, of course, going to be following this every step of the way because I think that this could be the case that potentially changes everything. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. I'm top music attorney, Miss Crystal.